Welcome to the Blocks 3DSMAX overview. My name is Jonathan Abenheim, and in this video, I'm going to be covering everything you need to know about the blocks so that you can start creating super fun animations. They are designed to feel light, minimalistic, and within minutes, you'll have mastered not just one rig, but all 12 of the blocks, since they have the exact same rig setup, which makes going from one rig to another super easy and fun. In this overview, I'm going to be using the Jordan rig to demo all of the blocks key features, and in the customization chapter, I'm going to be transforming Jordan into a robot, but this time we're doing it in 3DSMAX, so make sure you stick around until the end. It's going to be a lot of fun. This video is split up into multiple chapters. You can find all of the topics I'll be covering right below in the description box of this video, and with that said, let's begin with a general overview of the rig. The blocks were built using my favorite rigging tool for Macs called Instant Rig. No plugins required to run the blocks. You simply open up the file and you are ready to animate. The rig is self-contained within the 3DSMAX file and has wonderful backwards compatibility. Now I'll be covering all of the cool and nifty features you'll find on these rigs, and we're going to start things off by discussing the master controller, where you'll get access to a few really fun tools that give you a lot of creative freedom while animating. So the first thing we'll take a look at are the tools available via the master controller. So when I select it in the Modify tab, you'll notice a few options available. First one is Instant Rig, which takes you directly to the website where you'll find excellent, easy to read documentation with animated GIFs, gotta love those, which explain everything you need to know about these rigs. Now, I'll be giving you most of this information here in this overview, but it's a wonderful resource to have if ever you need a quick reminder on how the tool works. Next is the Pose Manager, which is a wonderful tool that lets you quickly mirror your poses and limbs. I'll be showing you how it works in the next chapter. It is definitely super fun to have this type of tool built right into the rig. Next up is the Overlapping Action tool. As the name implies, if you want to quickly add in some overlapping action, this tool does the trick and is also a lot of fun to use. I'll be showing you how that works in the Overlapping Action chapter. Finally, we have the Extract option, which is essentially going to bake everything out for you. Now, we won't be covering this feature in this overview, but you can visit the Instant Rig website to read more about it. Let's take a look at the Pose Manager. Very, very cool tool. And to launch it, we select the master controller, click the launch icon, and you'll see it automatically docks to the left side of my screen. If I want to place it to the opposite side, just click the right arrow. If I want to undock it, just click the same icon, and you can place this anywhere you like in your viewport, wherever you feel most comfortable. Now, I'm going to keep it to the left side, and the next thing I want to do is set up the settings option on the limbs so that the Pose Manager knows which arm is what. So to do that, you click the settings option right here, the hexagon on the hand, and right here where it says mirror limb, pick mirror limb. I'll click that. I'll select any controller on the opposite arm. It will automatically rename this to arm 2 and making this arm number 1. I'm going to do the same thing for the legs. Pick mirror limb. I'll select the opposite knee pull vector. It automatically names this leg number 2, and this becomes leg number 1. So we're all set. We can use the Pose Manager. So let's do that. I'm going to get us a pose very quickly. Our character is saying hello. So let's say this works, and I like it. So starting off, we see action and we have single option. So with this already set as is, I'm going to click copy. If I select my opposite controller and click paste, I can paste that pose. I can go through each controller and paste it that way. Very, very easy, very straightforward. The reset option is essentially the same reset as we find to the right side. So let me show you another way of doing this. Now, if I select this controller or any control on this hand, let's say I select the hand control, but I go over to module and I click on copy. I can select my opposite arm and I click paste, and it will automatically copy the entire arm. How cool is that? So let me reset it and show you another thing that you can do with this Pose Manager, which is super cool. Let's select this arm, and still in module, I can click flip and it will mirror the pose. Very, very cool. So the settings work the same way for the legs. Let me show you right here. Now I'm going to move the knee pull vector right here like this. So let's say I have this knee pull vector selected. I'm under module. I click flip. It's going to mirror the pose. And essentially you can do this with any part of the body. So let's say the head is tilted screen left. If I press flip, it'll tilt screen right. Let's say my chest control is tilted screen left. If I click flip, it'll do it the opposite direction. So this goes for any control, flip. How cool is that? So that is the Pose Manager tool. Super useful if you need to copy a pose, copy a single controller, mirror a controller, even mirror an entire pose even. You can imagine how useful this tool is for walk cycles as an example, given that you can mirror an entire pose. I can go on and on about how much I love this tool. It's a wonderful addition built right into the rig. And on that covers everything you need to know about the Pose Manager. All right, this next feature is called Overlapping Action. It is built right into the Instant Rig. It is a lot of fun to use, and to access it, you want to click on the Master Controller here, and in the Modified tab, you'll see it right here, Overlapping Action. I'm going to click Launch. Now, it automatically docks to my left side. With the arrows up top, I can change the docking location to the right. If I click the left, it'll go back to the left. And if I click the left again, it will undock it. So you get the point, really user-friendly, pretty straightforward. So I'm not going to cover all of the settings, but we will cover a few. You'll see it is very, very simple to have fun with. And in just a few clicks, we're going to see some overlapping action. So let's do that right now. First thing that we need is some animation. So I'm going to add in some animation on the chest so that it rotates back and forth, and we are going to add overlapping action to the head. So let me turn on auto key. I'm going to set a few keys just like this. Go on frame 10, and this should do it. And I'm going to copy these keys. 100 frames is more than enough to show you this feature in action. So I'm going to turn off auto key, press play. The animation is looping. It's working fine. The head is in world space at the moment. We won't change that. So I'm going to click reset attributes just to default all the settings because I was playing around with it before. And I'm going to select my head since I want to activate the overlapping action on the head. And I click overlapped, and you see a bunch of keys. Press play and you get instant overlapping action. Of course, you can mess around with these settings to change the effect. It is really, really cool. To the right, you have recover, which is essentially delete. So if I press that and press play, you see all the keys are gone. Now I'm going to change the world space of our head to follow the chest, just like this. So now it's following the chest. I'm going to click overlap again, and now it is overlapping. But let's say you want to just have rotation overlap. Let's hit delete, and here controller, let's select rotation and click overlap. And now we can see a little bit of rotation, not a lot. We can feel it, but let's increase it. And to do that, you want to use the rotation influence. Let's crank it up to 10. Now I can just click overlap once again, and it will override the keys. I don't have to delete it. So I'm just going to click it, press play, and there you go. It is very, very cool. A lot of fun, very easy to use. So just for kicks, let's select the arm. I'll keep everything as default and just hit overlap. And we can see in just a few clicks how you can have fun with this. On the website, there's a very cool example of a character riding a horse, and there's overlapping action on the head, and you can do it to the limbs. It's just a lot of fun to mess around with. It is built right into the rig. So go ahead, explore this really, really cool tool. It's called Overlapping Action, and that is how it works. Let's take a look at the Layer Explorer. In it, you'll find a selection set that I created to keep the scene nicely organized for you. Now, there are two ways to access it. First is via the Scene Explorer icon right here. If you click it, you'll get the Scene Explorer window pop up. And if you don't see your layers, it's probably because you have yours set to sort by hierarchy. You just want to click on the layer icon to the left, and there you go. Second way to access it is by clicking the Layer Explorer icon right here. Mine is docked to the right side of my command panel. Now, both showcase the same info, but I'll be using the bigger window to explain. Starting at the top of the list with number 0, we have the rig, and in brackets, do not touch. And as the name implies, we don't want to mess with this one, otherwise we probably will break the rig. Number 1, we have the tweak controls. These can be used for additional control over the lower mid-spine and legs, and can be used to create fun secondary motion on the limbs. Number 2, we have the mesh visibility. If you open it up, you can hide and unhide the head, arms, spine, comms, and legs. And if you open up the arms and legs, you'll find more options available. This is super useful if you want to hide certain body parts while animating. Last in the list is number 3, and there you'll find all of the character controllers nicely grouped together. Arms and legs have more options for you as well, making it easier to toggle between FK and IK controllers, as you will see in upcoming chapters. And that covers this overview for the Layer Explorer. All right, let's begin. And first off, you'll notice that I've gone ahead and I've hidden all the other controllers using the Layer Explorer since we're only focused on the head. So you'll notice that there are two controllers, one big and one small inner control. The bigger outside controller, the hexagon, is your primary controller. The small inner control, the circle, is your secondary controller. I'm going to start with the outside controller first, and there you have your standard rotations available. And if you translate this control, your head will be able to squash and stretch. Next, I'm going to select the inner controller, the smaller circle, and here you have rotations available as well. No translations, only rotations. So let's go back to the bigger outside control, and here we find our head settings. So first setting is called the free move, and if you turn this on, it will lock the head in world space. So let me quickly turn on the torso controls and show you what I mean. This is very useful for cartoony animation when you want to have the head pinned and the body doing something else. Think of the classic Roadrunner animations and you can quickly understand how that works. So next up is the Rot Apps Rel. It's the rotation absolute / relative, and if you substitute this wording for world space or space options, it's a lot easier to understand. So 1.0 means the head will follow the chest, and 0 means the head will be following world space. Next, we have the pivot absolute / relative. 1.0 means that when you rotate your head, the neck will follow as well. 0 means no rotation at all. So if I rotate my head this way, the neck will not move. Next, in the attributes, we have the curve weight value. Now, this setting only works with multiple bones, and since we only have one bone in the neck, you can simply ignore this setting as it will not affect the neck. Next, we have the squash value. So if I translate my head, I can adjust the amount of squash and stretch that I want. Last one is the constant space, and this is the same as the curve value. This setting only works with multiple bones, so you can ignore this one as well. This covers everything you need to know for the head. Let's take a look at the arms, and the first thing I'm going to show you is how to switch between FK and IK modes. So in order to do that, you want to select this tiny hexagon controller right here on the hand, and from now on we'll call it the settings controller because this is where you'll find all of your FK, IK settings for your arm. Now, if you try and select any other controller, you'll see that the only thing that appears in the modify tab is the reset option. So back to our settings controller on the hand, and in the modify tab you'll see a lot of options. Now I promise you in a few minutes you'll have a complete understanding of all these options. It's actually quite easy, and we're going to jump right into it, starting at the top with the IK FK switch. So it's currently set to 1.0, which means if I select my controller and rotate, FK is active. So let's switch it to 0 for IK, and you'll notice that no IK controllers are visible, which brings us to the hide / unhide controller section. Here we can toggle on and off our FK control. That works just fine, but the IK toggle does not work, and that's because I have it disabled in the selection set. So let me open up the Layer Explorer window. I'm going to place it right here, and if I open up our arm section and I turn on my IK visibility and I try the toggle once again, the IK toggle will work. So I just prefer using a drop-down list versus these toggles. It just feels a lot easier to manage since everything is here in one place. It's just a personal preference. So let's hide the FK controls and keep the IK controls, which is represented by the hexagon controller around the wrist. Very easy to remember. Hexagon control is IK, circle is FK. Now, if I move my IK controller, it works, and if I translate it, you get squash and stretch as well. Let's reset the arm back to its default position. So now you know how the IK FK switch works. You also know how the hide / unhide controller section works. The stretch toggle, by the way, is connected to the tweak controls right here. Now, let's keep the arm in IK and continue down the list. Continuing on, under the IK FK switch, we find stretchable. This value is set to 1, which means the IK arm will stretch. So let's grab the arm and stretch it out just like this. Now, if I set the value to 0, it will turn it off. So it is essentially an on and off switch for your stretching in IK mode. Pretty straightforward. Next, let's reset the arm back to default. We have our soft IK, which is used to eliminate elbow pops. So if I increase this value, I'll create a buffer around the elbow, eliminating essentially elbow pops so that you'll get a nice smooth transition. A low value here will give you a great result, but if you want to crank it up, 1.0 is the max value. Next on the list is the pull snap. This option will allow you to pin your arm to the elbow pull vector. So let's change this value to 1, and as you can see, the arm is now pinned. So if I move any part of the body, the arm stays put. This is a very useful option for cartoony animation. Let's say your character's hanging off a tree or is hanging onto a cliff or something like that. The elbow needs to stay locked in place. This is the option for that. Next, we have the FK Absolute Relative option, which is essentially a space switcher for the FK arm. So let's switch from IK to FK and I'll show you how it works. First, let's go back to the switch, change it to 1. We're going to load up the Scene Explorer, and in the arm section, you can hide your IK and turn on the FK. And there you go. We are now in FK mode. Let's go back to the settings, and currently our FK Absolute Relative is set to 0, which means it's in world space. So technically, if I rotate the torso controller, the arms should stay facing forward. So as I rotate, you'll notice that only the forearm and hand are facing forward, but the bicep is following the chest. Why is that? This is happening because I've set a few parameters this way to demonstrate the twist orientation option located right here in the curve attributes. This option gives you the flexibility to adjust the twist percentage in the arm. So let me reset the torso position, and I'm going to rotate the arm just like this in order to demo the twist orientation. Now, first we have the follow upper. This rotates the twist on the bicep. Next, we have the follow middle, which controls the forearm and hand. And then we have the follow lower. This parameter doesn't affect our rig because it requires a roll bone in the arm, which we do not have. So we only need to focus on the upper and middle parameters. Let's start with the upper value, and I'll change it to 1. If I rotate the arm from the top controller, the full arm will twist. Let's reset the arm and I'll twist my torso. Now you can see that the arm is now facing forward just as you would expect. Let's reset the torso. Next, we have the middle value. It's currently set to 2.5. So if I change it to 1, you'll notice that the hand will follow the arm when I rotate the forearm controller. So if you want to adjust your twist rotation, this is the section for that. But note that when you open up the files, it'll already be set to 1.0, which is pretty much what I use by default. I don't really play around with these options, but they are there for you to play with and have fun if need be. So feel free to change it as you see fit. Next up, we got the IK-FK match tool. This one is super fun to use, and just before I show you how it works, I'm just going to toggle on my Scene Explorer window and open it up to my arms, and you'll understand why in just a second. So let me select my arm and pose this arm quickly. Let's say I'm happy with this pose. I'm going to select my settings, and I want to switch this pose to FK. So right here you have 2 buttons. A very easy way to understand it is to look at the first 2 letters, IK and FK. I'm in IK already. I want to go to FK. So I just click the FK to IK, and I'm going to hide my IK controllers and turn on my FK controls. The last thing I need to do is just to turn on my switch right here to 1, and I am in FK mode. Now let's do the reverse. Let's go back to IK, and let's say I'm happy with this pose. I'll turn the wrist like this, select my settings. I'm in FK. I want to go to IK. I press this one, and I just need to turn off my FK, turn on my IK, and in the IK-FK switch, go to 0, and if I select my hand and I move it, I am back to IK. And it's as simple as that. I can then select and reset to get back to default, and that is how the tool works. Next is the mirror limb option, which I'll be covering in the Pose Manager chapter. So we'll skip over this one, and right below we find the IK length setting. Now, if you want to have a little fun customizing the length of your arms in IK, you could do it with this feature. The upper length increases the bicep, the lower length increases the forearm, and total length increases both at the same time. Right below we have the curve attributes, and similar to the neck, curvy and constant space settings won't have any impact on the rig, so we can skip over those. And the one setting that does apply is the squash value. So let me grab my arm and extend it out just like this. And with this setting, I can adjust the amount of squash and stretch in my arm. Definitely a lot of fun to play with. And final feature, right at the very bottom of the list, is the hand attributes. Using the hand scale value, it allows you to change the size of your hand. Max value when you supersize is 5.0, and when you downsize, you can go right up to 0.01, which is ultra tiny. Best part is that it works with both IK and FK arms. Lots of fun possibilities with this one. And on that note, this completes the arms chapter. Let's have a look at the torso controls. You'll notice the exact same setup as the head. The bigger outside controller is the hexagon. That's your primary controller. Smaller inner controller, the circle, is your secondary controller. On the primary controller, you'll find standard rotations as you'd expect. Now, if you translate this control, you get squash and stretch. Secondary controller can only be rotated, not translated, so just keep that in mind. All right, let's check out the settings which are located on the primary controller. So the first setting is called free move, and similar to the head, except this time you can pin the torso just like this. This is very useful again for cartoony animation when, say, you want to have the body pinned and the limbs doing something else. Next, we have the rotation absolute/relative. Another easier way to think of this is world space. 1.0 means the torso is following the upper body, which you can see as I rotate here. And 0 means that the torso is in world space. So let me rotate this and you'll notice that now it is in world space. Next, we have the pivot absolute/relative, and when you have this set to 0 and you rotate your torso, you'll notice that it rotates on itself. Now, if we change this to 1 and you try to rotate it, you'll see that the rotation pivot has changed and it keeps the lower stomach locked in more or less and rotates around it. Both options are very useful and have different use case scenarios. Next, in the attributes, only the squash value pertains to our rig, and similar to the head and arm, you can simply ignore the curvy and constant space settings. So let's move our torso, and with the squash value, we can adjust how much squash and stretch we want to have affect this area. Right below, we have our comm and pelvis controllers. No special settings on these ones. Rotations available as you would expect. And this time you can actually translate both of these controllers to get squash and stretch. And that covers the torso controls. Starting off with the IK/FK switch, I'm going to go up to my Scene Explorer, load that up, go down to my legs, and I'm going to hide my IK, unhide my FK. I'm going to go up to my switch and change it to 1. Now my FK is enabled. Now we're going to go back to IK, select the settings, going to hide my FK, unhide my IK, and bring it back to 0 on the switch, and IK is back. Next up is stretchable, which is essentially your squash and stretch on and off. So you can see right now that the squash and stretch is on. But if I go back to the settings and I put it to 0, I turned it off. So it is essentially an on and off switch for your squash and stretch. Next up, we got the soft IK, which is used for knee pops. I'm going to crank it up to 1 and I will pull my leg down. Knee pops disappear. And just remember that a very low value here of say 0.3 or even 0.2 will give you an excellent result. Next up, we got the pull snap. Very useful for cartoony animation if you need the knee pinned to the knee pull vector and have the body independent and not affect the knee. This is how you do it. Again, very useful for cartoony animation. Next, we got the FK absolute relative value. Now for this, we need to hide our IK and we're going to unhide our FK. We'll change the settings on both legs to enable the FK. So I got to set this to 1. I'm going to set my other leg to 1 right here on the switch. Now, if I use my comm and I rotate, you'll notice that the effect does not happen. Both legs move as you would expect. You have to use the inside pelvis controller to see the effect with this setting. So as I rotate, you'll notice that both legs are in world space, but the quads are kind of not facing forward, and we're going to fix that right now with the twist orientation, same as the arms. So at least you have the option to customize how much twist you get from the legs. Now, if I twist my pelvis, both legs are in world space and are following forward, or at least pointing forward. Now, if I change the setting from 0 to 1, you'll see that the left leg is now following the pelvis, and I'll do the same on the other side. And now both legs should be following the pelvis. And there you go. That is the FK absolute relative setting. Next is the IK/FK switch. And for this, we're going to go back to our IK leg. So 0 on this foot and 0 here. Now I'm just going to hide and unhide my controls. So I only have my IK ones visible. So let's pose the foot like this, and let's say I want to switch from this to FK. I'll just select the FK button. I'm going to enable the FK controls and just switch it to 1 to go back into FK. Pretty simple. You get used to it. It goes really, really fast. And now we'll do the reverse. I'm going to select my settings. I'm going to click on IK. I'm going to hide my FK, enable IK, and go to 0 for IK mode. And we are back to IK. And that is the IK/FK switch. Next, we're going to skip over the hide, unhide controls, and we'll also skip over the mirror limb. We find the IK length, and for this one, upper length controls the upper part of the leg, lower length controls the lower part, and the total length controls both. Very simple feature if you want to extend your limbs in IK mode. Next, in the curve attributes, we got the squash, curvy, and constant space. The only one that applies to us is the squash value, which is currently set to 0. So this value right now, when I grab my leg and I stretch it out, you'll see the stretch is constant. Now to change that, just grab the setting, I'll change it to 1. And when I stretch out the leg, you'll see that the stretch is now thinning out depending on how far I stretch the leg. All right, we're going to skip over the twist orientation. We already covered that. Now, last in the list reads hand attributes, but it should read leg attributes. No big deal, minor typo, but this setting is really, really useful if you want to change the size of your foot on the fly. Of course, these attributes are all animatable, so you can have just tons of possibilities with the fact that you can animate it. This is the type of setting I wish all rigs would have, because let's face it, sometimes you want to change the size of your feet depending on what you're doing in your animation. If say you're doing cartoony stuff or not, it's just fun to be able to change the size of your feet that easily and change the size of your hands. So this setting is available for the hand and feet, and you can go huge or you can go ultra tiny depending on what it is you need for your animation. And that's how it works. The blocks give you a lot of creative freedom to modify the look of your characters when it comes to customization. All of the geometry is editable, making it super easy and fun to come up with really cool and unique styles, as you can see here with my Jordan examples. The best part is that these rigs stay fully intact and ready to animate. Here we have a Jordan rig that I'm transforming into a robot using the element tool to scale my geometry along with the move tool. No previous modeling skills required because you already know how to use these standard tools. So as I finalize the robot transformation, you can see that most of the changes, if not all, involve scaling the geometry. It's really that simple. Aside from the arms, which I pushed out slightly with the shoulder tweak controls, and the head, which I'm going to move forward. Let's not forget the hands and the feet, which we can make bigger. Why not? We have that option, so let's use it. And that is all it takes to transform Jordan into a robot. It was that easy. I'm going to do a final check to test the rig to make sure that everything works correctly. And as you can see, everything is intact and ready to animate. And that was the Jordan transformation into a robot. This concludes the overview for the 3DSMAX version of the blocks. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at watchmeanimate@gmail.com or drop a comment below with your question. Thanks again for watching and supporting me by purchasing the blocks. I hope you have a lot of fun animating them, and definitely tag me on your social media if you have a cool animation to share. And on that, stay tuned for more upcoming content featuring the blocks, body mechanic rigs made simple and fun.